You look at her and feel something rare, something that feels like affection, connection, presence, a way she looks at you that freezes you in place, a kind of attention that makes you think, she truly sees me. But what you haven't yet realized is that this sensation isn't about you. It's about what she wants to extract from you. Narcissists don't arrive screaming. They arrive with charm. They don't ask for space. They invade it with smiles, gentle touches, precise words. They fill you up too quickly, and before you know it, you no longer know where your will ends and where the need to please her begins. Behind the sparkle in her eyes, the caring words, the gestures that appear loving, there's something else. A game, an emotional architecture where every word is bait, where every gesture is an invisible contract. She doesn't want connection. She wants worship. She wants control over your attention, your mind, your world. And the more you give, the more she drains. And then she blames you, calls you weak, unstable, dramatic, as if the chaos didn't start with her, as if the fault were always yours for not being able to hold her game together. The narcissistic woman is like a sweetened poison. She presents herself as intense, present, captivating, but behind that delivery is an emotional debt that can never be repaid. Everything from her comes with a hidden price, an invisible cost, your stability. And the more you try to fix it, the more confused you become. The more you try to understand, the more she shapeshifts. What seemed like love was just a refined trap. Seneca once said, "The greatest slavery is to be a slave to others' approval." And the man who loses himself trying to be loved by a woman like this loses far more than love. He loses clarity, he loses strength, he loses his center. Because the love she offers is not a space where you grow. It's a mirror in which you see yourself, but no longer recognize who you are. That's why you need to wake up. You need to learn to identify this pattern before it destroys your foundation, before it corrodes your self-worth from the inside out, because narcissists don't want to love. They want to be adored. They don't want to relate. They want to test, dominate, and reshape. And the man who tries to fix a woman like this ends up breaking himself. So take a deep breath, go quiet within, and listen to what's about to be revealed. Not out of hate, not out of vengeance, but out of clarity. Because you weren't born to be consumed by anyone. You were born to be whole, and a whole man is not dominated by charm. He sees through it and remains firm, because firmness is the only language narcissism can't translate. It feels like a dream. She sees you, she compliments you, says you're different, that she's never met anyone like you, and you, carrying the weight of your old emotional wounds, believe it. Because the emptiness you've been carrying finds an echo in the intensity she offers. But what feels like affinity is bait. What seems like connection is a trap. Because feminine narcissism doesn't arrive in the form of coldness. It arrives in the form of premature sweetness, of exaggerated attention, of emotional urgency. She settles in quickly, makes you feel special far too soon. And you, maybe never having been validated like this before, give in. But what's happening here isn't love, it's control. She wants to create emotional possession, and she does it using almost magical language. She praises you, but observes. She caresses, but calculates. Every gesture is a step in building a prison that looks like affection. But the kind of affection that suffocates isn't love. It's a tactic, and tactics don't involve feeling. They involve strategy. The man who doesn't understand this thinks he's being loved, but he's being ensnared, because that early excess of giving isn't a sign of real connection. What grows too fast is fragile. Real love takes time. Narcissistic love doesn't. It advances like poison, sweet, fast, and fatal. And what she offers at the beginning, she later collects. With interest, she demands constant presence. She demands explanations. She demands your peace. You need to observe. Introduce small delays. Don't give yourself away completely. Test her patience, slow the pace, and watch whether she respects your rhythm or reacts with subtle manipulation. Because the woman who wants you for control won't accept pauses. She wants a continuous stream of attention, of response, of submission, and any resistance on your part will expose the truth behind the charm. And she shows a lot. She touches too much. She stares with an unusual intensity. There's too much coincidence. Same tastes, same stories, same wounds. But it's not coincidence, it's method. It's manipulation disguised as affinity. And if you're not alert, you'll confuse technique with destiny. You'll believe you found love, when in truth, you're about to lose your sanity. Be cautious with what feels too perfect, because too perfect lies. And the man who doesn't spot that lie soon enough ends up searching for meaning where there was only illusion. And the worst kind of prison is the one built with affection, because by the time you notice, you're already emotionally shackled. In the beginning, she seems too perfect, likes the same things you do, shares the same opinions, the same beliefs, talks like you, thinks like you, vibrates like you, and you think, finally someone who understands me. But it's not about understanding, it's about mirroring. The narcissistic woman is a master at capturing what you value and wearing that image, not out of affinity, but out of strategy. She molds herself to your worldview, not to walk beside you, but to install herself inside your mind. And the mirror she creates is seductive, because you see yourself in her, and anything that reflects us attracts us. But this isn't connection, it's illusion. She's not being authentic, she's being a reflection of what you long for, a reflection of what you silently seek, a reflection of what you've lacked for too long. And that's why she gets in so easily, because what you're seeing in her is what you've always wanted to see in someone. But what you're seeing was manufactured. And here lies the most counterintuitive truth. The more you see yourself in her, the more you're being manipulated. The more perfect she seems, the deeper you are in the game. Because her goal isn't to know you, it's to mold you, and the molding begins with the reflection. She needs you to lower your guard, needs you to feel safe, and nothing offers more safety to a man starved of understanding than a woman who seems like everything he ever wanted. But that reflection has an expiration date. At some point, she'll want to dominate, and you'll begin to feel it. A strange sensation will surface, as if little by little you're disappearing, because she doesn't love you. She copies you in order to later break you. She imitates who you are, so she can take everything you have. That's why you must interrupt this pattern. Introduce small tensions, disagree, question, test her reactions, see if she can handle being challenged. Narcissists can't stand frustration. They hate losing control of the narrative. The man who observes sees this quickly, because the mirror begins to crack under confrontation. And once again, the key lies in your body. Don't lean in to please, don't lower your gaze, don't soften your voice too much. Keep your posture straight, calm eyes. Pauses in your speech, slow responses, everything that creates friction reveals truth, because what's real stays solid under pressure. What's fake shatters. And the woman who lives by mirroring can't withstand the pressure of a man who doesn't need validation. Because the man who doesn't bow to the reflection sees what lies behind the mirror, and more often than not, what he finds isn't love. It's refined manipulation. You feel like you're on top of the world, as if you're the most admired, most desired, most deeply understood man alive. She places you on a pedestal, fills you with words no one else ever dared to say, validates you in ways you thought were impossible, and you convince yourself you've found love. But what you've really found is the beginning of a cycle, a calculated cycle, a scripted one, because the narcissistic woman doesn't lift you up to honor you. She lifts you up so that when she brings you down, it hits harder, it's subtle. First comes the exaggerated affection, then small criticisms wrapped in flattery, a compliment, followed by a sting. You're so smart, but sometimes you seem distracted. I like you. I just wish you were more mature. And without realizing it, you begin to adjust, to try to please, to constantly improve, because you feel that if you don't, you'll lose that initial love she gave you. But that love was never real. It was bait, and now you're already trapped. This alternation between affection and contempt creates emotional dependency. The man enters a state where all he wants is to return to being the one she used to praise. And this desire to win back that earlier version of her keeps him hooked, blind, submissive. But the truth is, the narcissistic woman was never who you met at the beginning. That was an act, emotional theater. What she's showing you now is who she truly is. At this point, you start to feel small, insecure, and every attempt to regain the initial connection is met with more criticism, more silence, more sarcasm. And the more you try to fix things, the more powerless you feel, because her logic isn't love, it's domination. And domination requires that you begin to doubt yourself. But narcissism collapses in the presence of firmness. When she belittles you, don't play along. Don't defend yourself. Interrupt her with clarity. Look her in the eyes and ask, what's your intention with this? That simple question shatters the pattern, because narcissists unravel when confronted directly. They survive through theater, but theater doesn't survive direct light, and your body must follow your mind. Relaxed shoulders, a low, steady voice, no justifications, because the man who doesn't explain himself creates discomfort, and it's in that discomfort that the truth shows itself. When you stop explaining, she has to. And that's when you see what was always there, but only now you have the courage to face, because the man who stops seeking approval begins to reclaim his center. The narcissistic woman requires constant emotional fuel. She needs to be remembered, confirmed, noticed. And what feeds that need, silently, is your attention. As long as you're there, available, present, trying to fix, trying to understand, she stays in control. But when you vanish, when you disappear without warning, without drama, without explanation, something happens. The game crumbles, because what sustained the performance wasn't the bond. It was your energy, your emotional presence. Absence works as a test, and she reacts quickly, at first with irony, then with anger, then with seduction. She shifts emotions, changes her tone, tries to pull you back in. But what seems like affection is just desperation to reconnect the cycle of manipulation. A healthy woman respects your space. She waits, observes, stays. A narcissist panics because she cannot bear not being the center of your mind. This is the most revealing moment. When you disappear, you see who she really is. And this must be done with presence, not out of immaturity, not to punish, but to affirm your sovereignty. 72 hours, no messages, no clues, no hints, not to provoke a reaction, but to observe one. Because her reaction to your absence says more than all the words she ever spoke, and your body, during this process, is crucial. The man who withdraws with purpose doesn't need to justify his silence. He walks with a steady gaze. He slows his gestures. He carries an energy that never begs for reconnection, and what cannot be read cannot be manipulated. What doesn't explain itself cannot be controlled, and that alone breaks the narcissist's inner structure. She doesn't know how to deal with what she can't decode, what doesn't respond as expected, what doesn't return on her terms. The man who learns how to leave becomes an enigma, and a man's greatest strength in the face of emotional chaos is to become indecipherable, because what can't be deciphered can't be shaped, and what can't be shaped can't be used. You didn't lose a woman. You escaped a cycle that looked like love but was control. That disguised itself as care but demanded submission. The narcissistic woman never wanted to love you. She wanted to possess you. She wanted you to orbit around her, to bend, to forget yourself, to slowly cease to exist and become what she needed. An obedient, predictable, moldable reflection. The pain you feel now isn't grief. It's withdrawal. Withdrawal from approval, from attention, from emotional validation. Because she taught you silently that you only had value when accepted by her, and that shattered your center. But now, without her, without the gestures, the touches, the words, you're standing before the void. And it's exactly there, in that space, that you begin to rebuild. Because the void isn't absence, it's space, fertile ground, the silence that precedes a new structure. Seneca once said, "The man who lives to please will never be free." And maybe you've never been free. Maybe you've spent years adapting, trying not to lose, trying to earn what should have been freely given. But now it's different. Now your freedom begins, because true freedom isn't walking away from her. It's walking away from everything that demands you shrink in order to be accepted. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to beg for respect. You simply need to remember. Remember the man you were before you bent, before you tried to please the unpleasable, before you turned your presence into desperation, because a centered man is untouchable. He doesn't need to flee. He doesn't need to react. He doesn't need to win. He simply remains. And that constancy is what builds a new kind of power. Recognize the signs. Strengthen your presence. Guard your mind. Steel doesn't explain its hardness. It simply withstands fire. And when everything around you is melting, you'll be the silent rock. The rock no one moves. The rock no one controls. You weren't born to be chosen by just anyone. You were born to become someone who can't be manipulated by anyone.